I see people coming in. We were just talking about needing some intro theme music, but we don't have any, so it's just pretty quiet. All right, I will just give people 1 minute. Sarah says, just start singing. I don't think so. We're not going to sing. We will not. For those of you coming in, there is a live Q&A and everything. We're really here. So as we go through this, please feel free to type in questions as we go. All right. Since this is a mini webinar, we have to start relatively on time because we don't have that much time. So let me start and share my screen. And Jamie, you can see that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
I think we're good.
Okay, welcome everybody. We are gonna go because we have 30 minutes. So if you were on the part 1 of our webinar, you already know who we are. I'm Kelly Jo Horton. I'm a senior client partner at Atumos, and my co-host today is Jamye Breidenbach, who is a senior marketing operations consultant also with Atumos. Part 1, if you were here, you know we talked about scaling your team. Today, we're going to focus on how to scale your Martech stack, how to choose the right tools at the different stages of marketing and sales maturity, and really importantly, how to determine the difference between your needs and your wants. So we have broken this down into 4 stages of marketing and sales maturity. You know, this is something that I had seen before in some other articles. Sometimes they're called early, mid, late stage. We are doing it by early, progressive, mature, and world-class stacks. So we will be talking about these 4 steps today that apply to every single stage. Doesn't matter where you are. How to build a scalable solution, evaluate what you have, determine what you need, follow the same procurement process every time, rinse and repeat. So step 1, evaluate what you have. How many of you know like all of the tools that your company owns, who's responsible for them, where they live, what they do? There aren't very many companies that I've been to that actually have all of that documented. I think probably more common in places like the EU because they have to for compliance. But the first step you want to do with your stack, your current stack, is to document the current state. So you need to do a technology inventory, and I'm going to show you an example of that. You need to do a RACI, and I have an example of that as well. And then, of course, you have to draw that ecosystem diagram that I draw everywhere that I go. So what is a technology inventory? It's basically a spreadsheet or a smart sheet, something like that, that lists all the tools, who owns the contract, maybe even a link to the contract, the terms, like is it annual, monthly, whatever, the cost. You may or may not want to include the cost depending on who has access to this document, who the admins are, who the champions are in different groups, who the vendor contact is, and then the RACI, which we're going to talk about. So I think most of you have probably heard of RACI. It stands for Responsible, Accountable, Consult, and Inform. And it basically says who's responsible for what. It can be used for projects. It can be used for tools. It can be used for process, anything you want. You can apply it to almost everything. So this is how you would apply it in your technology inventory. So if I have a giant spreadsheet that has my list of tools, and I have all that information about who owns the contract, when it ends, how much it costs, all that stuff. I also have a section in this document with all the groups. And you know, this is a generalization. I have demand gen, marketing ops, blah, 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 all this stuff. But I have the RACI for each of these groups, like who is actually responsible for this tool, who only needs to be informed, which is important. Sometimes you don't want to have like 15 people in a meeting to decide on something. You just want to inform that group after the fact. So you need to know which RACI each of these groups fall into when you're talking about buying a new tool. This is an example of a technology diagram. I'm not the best artist, but I do this usually when I go into a new job, or I've helped clients do it, just because it's really informative to see what you have in a visual representation like this. This particular one is focused on lead sources and data sources. So how all the leads get into your systems, and which systems change data or add data. That's one way to look at it. Here's another way to look at it, is to split it up across all of these different categories. There's a million ways. You've all seen the stackies, and they're way more beautiful than anything I could ever draw. But to me, I mean, this is what makes sense to my brain. There's no right or wrong way to do it. Just do it however it makes sense to you. It's a great thing to be able to publish for your entire company to see, so they understand the complexity that we're working with. Step 2, determine what you need.
Cool. I'll go ahead and take this one. So the second part to scaling your Martech stack is determining what you need. So you've already documented and evaluated the current state, and now have information needed to identify your gaps. So we'll talk through each stage shortly, but the takeaway from this section is to determine what you need by asking yourself and your organization 4 questions in relation to your tech stack as a whole, or each individual tool. So looking at current state, does this meet my needs right now? Is the stack or the tool fulfilling what I'm currently needing it to do? For immediate forward thinking, what do I need it to do in the next 12 months? Future thinking, what do I need to support the business and revenue growth 5 years from now? And lastly, do I have the staff to support stack additions? Because we all know these tools cannot operate on their own. And if you're scaling your stack, you need to be scaling your team as well.
What?
So let's talk.
They don't run themselves? Are you kidding me?
They don't, unfortunately. Not at all. So let's jump into the stages. So in the early stage of maturity for your tech stack, the needs are quite minimal given the typical infancy of an organization. From a capabilities perspective, the business is focused on just a few critical things. So brand recognition, as you want people to know about you and start building your database with prospects. Tools to support these efforts are based around having a content management system and social media accounts to build a market presence. Secondly, the capabilities for an organization are around supporting inbound and outbound marketing efforts. Here is where an email tool can complement the website and social accounts to help support driving engagement and filling the prospect funnel for your sales organization. And depending on the sales process, a CRM would be a helpful tool here for managing client relations. And potentially an e-commerce platform, depending on what your products and services are. So we have a simple example diagram we'll build upon as we go through the stages to show what a stack might look like. In this early
point out that this is such a beautiful. I'm such an artist. Am I not an artist? Look at this. It's beautiful.
It's amazing. It gets the job done. So in this diagram, you may have noticed the tools are not necessarily integrated with each other. So sometimes when businesses get started, the tools are siloed, and that's okay. The important thing is that they're present to support the business, and the integrations can come at a little bit of a later time. But now let's talk about the progressive stage. So following the early stages, progressive stage, the additional capabilities for an organization at this stage of their maturity needs to be reporting on key metrics. So the business should have established goals and KPIs, and the stack needs to support you being able to report on those metrics. Another capability is having a lead lifecycle model. So understanding the buyer's journey, your sales cycle, and having automated lead routing in place for a successful handoff from marketing to sales. And one of my personal favorites for capabilities is having a center of excellence and standard operating procedures. Regardless of your level, these two things need to be defined. These capabilities ensure efficient, repeatable processes are created and followed for an organization to operate smoothly. With them, there is less guesswork and room for mistakes, and you can focus more on achieving your growth and revenue targets. And lastly, privacy compliance on all fronts needs to be a supported capability. It's equally as important if you were to map your buyer's journey with a lifecycle model. You need to be compliant with channels of communications and rights for privacy globally. So looking at the additional tools, first, upgrading your general email platform to a marketing automation platform creates a pathway for you to continue on into for future stages, not only from a communication standpoint, but effectively market across multiple channels and have automation of database management and other repetitive tasks for the marketing organization. And speaking of effective marketing, at this stage, you need to be integrating an event platform and advertising and SEO technology to continue building brand awareness and increasing traffic to your digital properties. And finally, integrating sales tools is needed in order to enhance the sales side of the house. So integrating tools such as prospecting tools, data enrichment, and automated sales sequencing provide similar means of using automation and standard repeatable processes to up-level efficiency. So let's take a look at our example stack to see the changes from the early to progressive stage.
It's beautiful. It's all connected.
It's amazing. Again, time back. Do what works for you. If you can understand it and it gets the job done, I think it works. But the most noticeable difference for the diagram are the directional arrows between the tools. So this represents them being integrated and sharing information in their directional paths. So the sales tool and CRM are integrated with each other, passing information back and forth. And instead of the email platform that you saw previously, we've transitioned to a map, which is a center point for most of the integrations to link to. So now we can talk to the mature stage. So as the entire organization matures, of course, the need for capabilities grows. Your lead lifecycle model should now be built to include both lead and customer lifecycle processes. So this provides a greater level of information to influence your marketing efforts in relation to customer retention, upselling, and cross-selling. Experience optimization is a capability for dynamic personalization and a consistent regimen of A/B testing hypotheses for continuous improvement of an experience. The need for more standard processes and establishing governance of tools, accessibility, their owners' roles and responsibilities across the stack is absolutely necessary. So that ties back into ensuring you have a RACI document across your tech stack. And a mature stack also needs to have multi-touch attribution reporting. This would more accurately inform the business on where to spend marketing dollars to influence and drive revenue. And finally, for B2B organizations, account-based marketing is a needed capability with a strong strategy for targeting those top-tier accounts. So the tools needed to support these capabilities include an integration platform as a service. So that's that IPaaS acronym, but it's probably more commonly known as a middleware platform. The capabilities, scalability, security, and centralization of your integrations and API needs means faster implementation times, and it's more user-friendly for those that are not developers or tech architects to manage your integrations. So with the increasing complexity of analytics and supporting business intelligence for data-backed decisions, a data warehouse is a needed data management system, along with a BI tool and/or data visualization tool to tell a story and answer business questions. And of course, an ABM tool is ideal to have if one of your capabilities is account-based marketing. And again, increasing the sales muscle for enablement, look to include tools such as a chat bot and a scheduling tool if it's not already in your stack. But let's see what our diagram looks like now.
Are we ready?
So
okay.
fancy.
Yeah. So yeah, you may or may not have this iPaaS solution in the middle. It's really useful at this stage, any sort of middleware. And also notice that I have attribution under the ABM platform here, because there are a lot of ABM platforms that include some attribution capabilities. And also notice that, there are cloud solutions to these where it's not all separate tools and they're all built into one, or you can have, a stack that has all kinds of individual best-in-class tools. So none of these are one size fits all.
Yeah, so jumping into world-class. So the last stage for scaling Martech stack is what we consider world-class. At this point, the capabilities are extremely sophisticated with a well-functioning, very informed operation. The technology operations are fully integrated, creating a 360-degree view of your customer journey using a CDP and a DMP, and leveraging predictive analytics for earlier signs of potential buyers. The asset management capability means there's a central repository, a single source of truth, with the DAM, or a digital asset management platform, for your organization's entire digital content catalog. And so if we jump to our example diagram now, you'll see the evolution of our imaginary tech stack to what we consider to be world-class.
So many acronyms. The acronyms are off the charts when you get to this stage. So, you know, not everybody has a DAM or something like that, but if you do, I mean, that would be connected to all kinds of these platforms. I didn't draw it in, but just because it would look like spaghetti everywhere. But and also note, I have the iPaaS overlapping with a CDP, because the biggest difference in this in a world-class organization is to have a very fully functioning CDP, which is kind of the brains of your whole ecosystem. It's collecting information from whatever it's connected to, and creating a full view of your customer, your prospects, your accounts. And it very much overlaps with iPaaS and can work together with one of those sort of middleware platforms. DMP can live in iPaaS, it can live in CDP. The ABM platform also, a lot of them have predictive built in. They also have ad platforms built in. So it could look like just about anything. And if you're B2C, you would have your e-commerce platform that also might be just integrated with your website. And there are a lot of really specific tools also for B2C. So one size definitely does not fit all. These are just sort of pretty high level generic examples. So step 3, follow the procurement process. What do you mean you don't have a procurement process? Really? What? Why do you need one? Well, as MOPS people, we know that a lot of us have had like tools thrown over the fence to us and had somebody say, I need this implemented by tomorrow because I have a thing happening next week, right? You need a procurement process for planning, resource planning, roadmap planning, compliance, all kinds of stuff. How many of us have gotten tools where somebody gave it to us and they said, oh, well, the vendor said it had a native integration and it doesn't. So all these things, this is why you need a procurement process. So FOMO is real, fear of missing out. You hear people talking about all these buzzwords. They're not, I mean, these are real things on the right. They're not just buzzwords. They're real, you know, things. So, but don't feel like you're missing out just because you don't have a platform that gives you technographic data or all this other stuff. You need to understand before you acquire a new tool, your needs versus your wants. Don't just have FOMO. You need to involve all your stakeholders across the business. You need to decide who needs to be consulted. Forget the informed people, you can tell them later, but everybody else needs to be involved in this process, because as we know, everything in those ecosystems is connected. And if you buy one thing, it can upset everything down the line. So you'll choose a solution, not a vendor. Prepare to drive that vendor vetting process. Do not let the vendors drive it. And as Jamie said before, make sure you have bandwidth to support what you want to buy. So, and also the biggest thing that people forget is procurement doesn't stop with a PO. You need to create a clear implementation and adoption plan. Otherwise, you buy new tools and no one uses them. We've all experienced that. You need that technology document and the RACI so you know who owns everything. It's always a good idea to have champions across organizations so they can, it's like a train the trainer thing. You need to, as Jamie said, educate your stakeholders that technology does not manage itself. It's not like we just implement it and it works and you don't ever touch it again. It requires support. And the last thing that people forget to add is you need to reevaluate your tools on a regular basis. How many of you have like found out that a contract is up for renewal and you have like no time and you just end up signing the next contract because you never had left time to reevaluate it to see if you still needed it? So Wow, Jamie, we made it through. I can't believe it. In these little mini webinars, we try to talk fast. It's a lot of,
Drinking from the fire
information.
hose.
It is. It's a lot of information, but we wanted to leave time for some questions, and we do have a couple of questions. So the key takeaways that we want you to get from this is that no matter which stage you're in, the steps are the same. You should always evaluate what you have and create that technology diagram and the RACI, which can be a beast if you're in a big company with a lot of tools. But trust me, it's going to keep people from coming to you and asking you questions like, can I get an admin account on blah, blah, blah? It will reduce the number of people coming to you with questions. Also, when somebody leaves the company, it tells you, like, if they owned tools, you can go in and reassign them to other people. It's just a wonderful, you just have to do it. It'll save you so much headache. The second takeaway is you need to determine what you need for your level of marketing and sales. That has nothing to do with the size of the company. Usually there are some very small companies that are very sophisticated and mature. So don't think it's, oh, well, because I'm small, I don't need that. If you have a great marketing and sales team that's sophisticated and you have the ability to support those tools, go for it. The third thing, create a procurement process if you don't have one, and follow the same process every time. You need to vet your vendors exactly the same way. You need to have a POC process. You need to ask for references, all those things. That's a whole webinar in itself, how to vet vendors. But you need a procurement process so that people know how to buy new tools and you don't get surprised by someone purchasing something on a credit card. And lastly, rinse and repeat. Set up a schedule to reevaluate your stack on a regular basis so you don't get surprised with contract renewals and have to pay for another year because you didn't plan a migration off a platform, all that kind of stuff. So rinse and repeat is not the most fun thing, and it's what people usually don't pay attention to, but those are the steps for every single stage. So now we are going to take questions. You can type into the Q&A, and we have one that came up pretty early from Christina. So yeah, we know that people come in and out of companies. You've got, how many of us have had a customer success rep change so many times with companies, and it's really hard. Someone has to own that. I would say for that diagram or for the technology sheet, whoever owns that tool is responsible for updating that CSM. If you know that you've changed, and sometimes they just send you a random email, and sometimes you don't get one, and you don't know until you try to reach out that the person's not there anymore, you have someone new. But I would say set a policy for whoever is the R or the A in the RACI on each platform is responsible, one or the other is responsible for updating the contacts at the vendors. Yeah, especially because contacts, we do know contacts change all the time. So,
and I would say just having a general practice yourself of even reaching out, doing the communication yourself, checking in like every quarter or so. There's kind of those housekeeping tasks that you should be doing, across all of your tools, things of that nature, to stay informed and stay, keep things running smoothly. So I think that should be a step that you include as part of that, is to include an outreach to, whoever the tool vendors are that you're using, ensuring that the information that they have is up to date, information that you have is up to date. And I think doing that consistently is going to allow you to keep that inventory tool worksheet up to date. Yeah,
I can't say enough about that worksheet and how many times it saved me in the past. For example, contract renewals going to someone who's no longer at the company. And if it's an auto renew, right, it's just going to auto renew or it's not going to auto renew. It's just going to shut off and you're not going to be able to use the tool. I've seen that happen before. We've all seen what happens when one of the major vendors forgot to renew their domain. We will not mention names, but because the person left the company who was responsible for renewing the domain. So it's super, super important, even though it's a real pain to create it when you first start. It'll also show you how much money you're spending, which might be a little scary when you add it all up. And I've used that sheet before when I was asked to reduce budget by 15% at a company. And we looked through our tools and realized there was overlap with some of them. And we ended up being able to reduce our budget by 15%. So you can use it for all kinds of things like that. If anyone else has anything, any other questions, please type into the Q&A. Otherwise, we can end 3 minutes early, but we want to encourage you to sign up for MopsCon. And if you haven't heard of the Mopsies before, it's an award for your favorite Mops Pro, including yourself. Yes, you can nominate yourself. Okay, so just get over that. If you think you're awesome in some way, there are all kinds of categories for Mopsies. So yes, you can nominate yourself if you want to give yourself a pat on the back. You can nominate a friend, colleague, whatever. So, you know, we'd love to see you at MopsCon. We would love to see you nominate yourself or a friend for a Mopsy. So please go do that as soon as you get off the webinar, and we will be sending out recordings of both sessions. So watch your email for that. I want to thank Jamie for co-hosting.
Thank you for having me. It's been fun.
Thank you. All right. Have a good rest of your week, everyone, and we will see you next time. Bye.